I drove through the night from Wilmington to Raleigh, carrying the birthday cake our daughters had chosen for their mother. 17 hours spent on a dusty construction site, followed by a 2-hour drive through the rain, and finally a quiet moment at a nearly closed bakery where the clerk reminded me to refrigerate the cake right away. I nodded absently. The only thought echoing in my mind was that I had to be there, no matter how late. When I arrived home, the lights were still on. Music drifted down from upstairs, the same kind Monica usually played during her work parties. I entered quietly, expecting nothing. The house smelled unfamiliar, touched by a perfume I didn't recognize. It was sharp and persistent, clinging to the fabric of the air. As I passed the living room, I stopped. Laughter spilled down from the staircase, Monica's voice, light and easy. Then a man's, low and far too intimate. I stood at the foot of the stairs for a few seconds. I didn't call out. I didn't go up. I turned instead, walked down to the garage, opened the fridge, and placed the cake inside as if it were any other evening. Then I sat on the downstairs sofa, phone in hand, pretending to scroll through news headlines. But that night, I read nothing. My eyes stared at the screen, but my mind had gone completely still. My name is Ethan Carter. I'm 44 years old. I live in the suburbs of Raleigh, North Carolina, and for most of my adult life, I believed I was a lucky man. I had a stable career as a structural engineer, a modest house I helped design, 2 sweet daughters, and a wife who was both brilliant and full of fire. The next morning, Monica came downstairs with slightly tangled hair, wearing a man's dress shirt that wasn't mine. She froze when she saw me preparing coffee and breakfast for the girls. Neither of us spoke. I poured another cup and let the silence do the asking. My voice, my expression, everything in me quietly told her that I knew. She didn't say a word. Her face turned pale. I kissed our daughters on the forehead and left the house like it was just another ordinary morning. There was no shouting, no confrontation, no scene. But in that quiet moment, I understood with painful clarity that my 14-year marriage had ended. And from that day on, I began planning how to survive it quietly, carefully, without warning. I met Monica at a seminar that brought together professionals from construction and marketing. I was the quiet type, structured and practical. She was everything I wasn't: quick, magnetic, the kind of person who could command a room without trying. That contrast drew us in. Within a year, we were married. We built our first home with shared savings and shared dreams. Monica chose to keep her last name, and I never questioned it. When Sophie and Lila were born, our lives reoriented around them. I enjoyed the simplicity of home life gardening, fixing the porch, grilling after soccer practice. Monica was often on the move with her event planning career, but she tried to be there for the milestones. We once believed we made a perfect match, one person holding the ground, the other pushing forward. Maybe that's why I missed the first fractures when they came. Or maybe I saw them and chose not to face them. The shift didn't happen all at once. Monica was still Monica Sharp, magnetic, relentlessly busy, but her rhythm no longer matched ours. Conversations grew shorter. Her absence at dinner became a routine rather than an exception. She said her event work was expanding: new clients, new meetings, most of them happening in the evenings or on weekends. I understood the nature of her field, and for a while, I didn't question it. But soon came the late-night texts labeled as work, last-minute trips, the phone she now carried everywhere. A pattern was forming, and it became harder and harder to dismiss. I remember a Saturday when Lila had put on her princess dress, waiting for Monica to take her to a friend's birthday party. Minutes before we were supposed to leave, Monica messaged that she had an emergency meeting, and I took Lila instead. She didn't cry, just asked why Mom was always busy. I didn't know how to answer. I stroked her hair and said something about her mother working hard for all of us. But inside, Something felt off, like I was covering for someone who no longer wanted to show up. The nights grew colder. I still waited for Monica in the kitchen sometimes, but the exchanges grew faint, just a tired nod, a muttered goodnight, and separate rooms. Her phone now followed her into the bathroom. The lock screen had changed. So had the wallpaper, from a family photo to some abstract pattern I didn't recognize. I didn't check her messages. I didn't ask questions. Part of me still believed the woman I married wouldn't hide something serious. But deep down, I knew something had already slipped off course. One Friday night, Monica came home late, nothing unusual. She said the event had run over, took a quick shower, and headed upstairs. I had no intention of snooping, but when I picked up the purse she'd left on the armchair to bring it up to her, something small slipped out: a blister pack of birth control pills, tucked alongside a condom sealed in a zip bag. There was no reason for either item to be in the bag of a married woman of 14 years who lived with her husband and daughters. I didn't say anything that night. I didn't confront her. I simply sat in my home office, opened my laptop, and started pulling old emails, calendar notes, credit card transactions, things I had never thought to examine closely. One name kept appearing: Brandon Welch, a business partner Monica had mentioned here and there, someone she once described as professional, driven, and easy to collaborate with. There were messages, hotel bills, photos from events they attended together. Everything began falling into place, like a puzzle I never wanted to solve. But the picture was clear. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This was evidence. I saved everything, created a password-protected folder, and labeled it "For Later," as if timing would somehow make this easier to bear. But I barely slept for days. Not because I was angry, but because I was mourning. Silently. Something I had spent years trying to protect. A few days later, I spoke with Monica. Not to accuse, but to confirm. She didn't deny anything. She didn't panic. She said it wasn't serious, that she still loved me, still wanted to keep our family, but felt trapped. She said she needed to find herself again. She said I had grown too distant, too calculated, and couldn't give her what she craved from a partner. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just watched her, trying to recognize the woman who once built a life with me. What struck me most wasn't what she said. It was how calmly she said it, as if cheating wasn't betrayal, but a step in some personal evolution she was entitled to take. After that, I met with a lawyer. I wasn't ready to file for divorce. I wanted to understand the laws in North Carolina, where courts tend to favor the mother in custody cases. The attorney, a composed and direct woman, told me that unless I could prove Monica was unfit or neglectful, I stood to lose the house, lose most of my time with my kids, and still owe financial support. She said, almost gently, "If you're not ready to walk away empty-handed, stay quiet and prepare." I left her office no longer just a betrayed husband. I had become something else entirely, a man stepping into a quiet war, where victory would go not to the loudest, but to the one who waited and planned. I started keeping records. When Monica left, when she skipped the kids' events, where she spent money, how much time she gave to her family. I separated finances, opened a private account, shifted a portion of my income. I didn't forbid anything. I didn't escalate. But inside, I was different. I had stopped trying to save the marriage. I was only trying to save my right to be their father and preserve what peace I could for the two little girls who meant more to me than anything else in this world. I continued living in the same house with my wife for almost a year after finding out she was having an affair. Neither of us left. No words were spoken. We passed each other every day like strangers sharing a rental. She slept upstairs. I moved into my home office. One morning, I went up early to grab my laptop and saw her bed perfectly made, the pillow untouched like no one had slept there. I didn't ask. The truth is, I had stopped asking a long time ago. I knew she was still seeing that man Brandon, the business partner she once described as a good match for collaboration. At first it was just a suspicion, but the moment I saw a pack of birth control pills and a condom fall out of her purse, I no longer had to guess. I didn't get angry, just felt hollow. And then I started documenting everything, her comings and goings, hotel receipts, business events that always seemed to fall on days she missed the kids' school functions. Every morning I still made coffee, took the kids to school, cooked dinner. I still referred to her as their mom in front of the girls. I didn't break the routine, didn't let on that I knew anything, but inside, I was preparing. I had already met with a lawyer. I knew if I lost control or filed at the wrong time, I could lose both my kids and my house. North Carolina law doesn't favor fathers unless there's concrete proof. So I stayed quiet. I lived next to a cheater and pretended I didn't know, waiting for the right moment to strike back. Maybe she thought I was weak or naive, but the truth was, I had never been more clear-headed. I didn't go looking for someone new. That came only after everything between us had turned cold. Monica and I were like co-workers raising kids, no fighting, no touching, no interest in each other's lives. I figured I'd stay in that limbo until the kids grew up, then file for divorce. But then Camille came into the picture. Camille is a dentist, divorced for 2 years. She has a daughter in the same dance class as Lila. I saw her a few times during pickup. Didn't think much of it. Later, as we talked more, I realized she used to be Monica's best friend. They had been close in college but fell out over something Camille never elaborated on. Whatever it was, the friendship had long ended and Camille had no reason to stay loyal to someone who had abandoned her during her own divorce. We started talking more, not in a flirty way, but like two people who had both been through something, both trying to be good parents, both recognizing something familiar in each other's struggles. I didn't talk about Monica. Camille didn't ask, but she knew, and I knew she knew. It felt natural. She was smart, funny, never pitied me, but also didn't avoid the truth. Eventually, I invited Camille and her daughter to go camping with me and my girls. The kids got along instantly. No awkwardness, no forced smiles. Just two single parents trying to give their children a decent weekend. Things developed from there. We kept it quiet. I told no one. But I could tell Monica was starting to notice. I'm not sure exactly what tipped her off, but her behavior changed. She began asking where I was going, who I was with, why I wasn't sleeping at home. She started getting up early to make coffee, talking more with the kids, bringing home breakfast, little things she hadn't bothered with for almost a year. I didn't respond. I didn't lash out, but I didn't engage either. I just continued living my life, and she started to realize she wasn't the center of it anymore. Then, one night, she made her move. The kids were asleep. The house was quiet, and I was going over bills at the kitchen table. She sat down opposite me, her voice calm, almost soft. She said she had thought it through, that what had happened between her and Brandon wasn't betrayal. It was a necessary part of self-discovery. That open relationships were completely normal now, as long as two mature adults agreed on the terms. And if I really loved our family, I should consider opening my heart to such a model, one that would supposedly relieve the pressure from outdated expectations in traditional marriage. I looked at her, stayed silent for 3 seconds. Then I laughed, not a joyful laugh, but a short, dry sound that caught in my throat. I placed my hand on the table, not hard, but firm enough to make the water glass rattle, and stood up. She looked startled, asked what I was doing. I didn't answer. I just looked her in the eye and let her know, without raising my voice, that I was stunned she could even suggest this. She claimed my reaction was just the result of social conditioning, that I was stuck in rigid beliefs, unable to evolve. I didn't know what corner of the internet she pulled this from. But one thing became clear: she no longer felt guilt. She genuinely believed she could repackage her betrayal as progress, and that I would be the backward one for refusing to accept it. I didn't say another word, didn't raise my voice. I just walked to the door, opened it wide, and slammed it shut hard enough to shake the house. She called out, asking where I was going. I gave no answer. I went to the truck and sat in the dark for nearly an hour. No engine, no phone, nothing, just silence. And for the first time in months, I allowed myself to feel something raw rage. I had swallowed too much silence, tried too hard to keep the peace for the kids. Endured something people call maturity, but which was really just manipulation dressed up in modern language. That night, I realized something clearly. If I kept living this way, my daughters would grow up believing that betrayal was a form of personal freedom, and endurance was what love looked like. And when she found out that the woman was Camille, her former best friend, her entire demeanor shifted. It was no longer jealousy, it was offense. Like she couldn't believe I would dare. Truth is, I hadn't planned any of it, but I didn't feel guilty either. She betrayed me first. I wasn't chasing anyone new. I had simply reconnected with someone she herself had cast aside. After that night, I noticed her growing visibly unstable. It wasn't just vague jealousy or quiet watching anymore. She became strangely proactive, cleaning the house, cooking meals, asking the kids about their day, even asking me if I needed help with anything. One night, she waited in the living room until late, as if she were expecting me to come home from a date. I didn't confirm anything, didn't deny anything. I just said I was busy and went straight to my room. It was clear she was afraid of losing something, but not me. What she feared was losing her role in the structure of this family. She used to be the center, the one who called the shots, the one everyone revolved around. Now, she had no idea where she stood. Everything still ran smoothly with or without her. The kids were growing, and I was fine. That realization shook her. I didn't blame her for being afraid, but I didn't feel sorry for her either. I had been in that exact place once, feeling replaced, invisible. I had lived with that weight for a year. If it was her turn to feel it now, I wasn't going to stop it. You reap what you sow. One night, she came into my room without knocking, sat down, and said she still loved me, that everything that had happened was just a phase, that if I gave her a chance, we could start over for the kids, for our family. I listened. I didn't react, didn't agree, didn't reject her either. Then I got up, picked up a pillow, handed it to her, and told her that if she planned on staying in the room, the couch was hers. The next morning, I called my lawyer, not for advice, but to begin. I had waited long enough. The paperwork, the evidence, the records of shared assets. It was all neatly organized in a folder I'd kept hidden in my desk drawer. I handed everything over during our meeting without hesitation. She looked at me longer than usual, then asked one final time if I was sure. I nodded. Wasn't an ending. It was the only kind of freedom that still made sense. I had done everything I could to avoid turning this into a bitter fight, but if she wanted war, I was ready for that too. I didn't serve the divorce papers myself. I wanted everything handled legally, by the book. My lawyer arranged for the court to send someone directly. That morning, I dropped the kids off at school like usual. Before leaving the house, I left a note on the table letting her know someone would be coming later that day and that she should be home. I wasn't there when it happened, but through legal channels, I learned that everything went as planned. She opened the door, accepted the envelope, then closed it without saying a word. After that, she sat motionless in the living room for hours, never touching the lunch I had left in the fridge. That night, I came home late. She was still there, still silent. No crying, no shouting, just a deep, dense quiet hanging over the house. A few days later, she said she wanted to see her own lawyer. I nodded. No resistance, no control, I just told her that whatever happened, I wouldn't fight over anything so long as she was willing to give up the role of mother she only played on paper. But if she wanted to take this to court, I had every reason, every piece of proof, and every ounce of resolve to see it through. I didn't monitor her. She had every right to meet with a lawyer, and I respected that. But I knew exactly what was happening. My own attorney told me her side had reached out, requesting to delay the initial hearing. It seemed Monica still hadn't figured out her strategy, or more accurately, hadn't found the courage to face what was coming. A few days later, her mother called me. Her voice was shaky. She asked what was going on. Monica hadn't said a word. No calls, no visits, no check-ins with the kids. I gave her only one answer. Your daughter is deciding whether to save her family or save her ego. Then I hung up. I wasn't obligated to be the translator between her and the world anymore. Not long after, I learned she finally went to see a lawyer. A mutual acquaintance working at that firm said Monica showed up looking disoriented, firing off questions about custody, the house, finances. When asked how much time she had spent with the kids over the past year, she had no answer. And when they brought up Brandon, she started dodging. At the end of the meeting, she asked for more time before signing anything. She sat down to talk on a quiet weekday evening, after the kids had gone upstairs and the house was filled only with the hush of wind outside. I knew this conversation would come eventually, and I was ready for it. She said she didn't want a divorce, that everything that had happened was just a temporary detour, and that we could still rebuild if I was willing to open up. She didn't cry, but her eyes were pleading. She spoke of family, of the kids, of the years we'd shared. She even said I wasn't perfect either, that I had been distant, emotionally absent for years, that maybe, if I'd paid more attention, things wouldn't have spiraled like they did. I stayed quiet, listened from start to finish without interrupting, and when she finally went silent, I said only one thing: we can forgive someone for making a mistake. But we can't keep living with someone who still believes that mistake was justified. I didn't need her apology. I didn't need her to change. I just needed her to let go. Because everything she was saying now I had once wished for too. I had once hoped we'd fix it. But she was the one who walked away first. The hearing took place on a Tuesday morning. It wasn't dramatic like in the movies. Just a small courtroom, a long table, a judge in the middle, 2 attorneys, a few stacks of paperwork. I wore a light blue shirt, no tie. Monica sat 2 seats away. She didn't look at me. Everything we needed to say had already been submitted in writing. The lawyer meetings, the documentation, the evidence, it had all been collected. There were no arguments, no objections. The hearing was just the final formality, the last step to make official what we had both known for a long time. We were no longer husband and wife. The judge read the decision. Primary custody of the children was awarded to me. She would have visitation rights on a set schedule. Assets were split. The house would remain with me and the kids until the youngest graduated high school. After that, it would be sold and divided. No one cried. No one collapsed. Everything unfolded in silence. I didn't throw a celebration. Didn't post anything online. After the hearing, I brought the girls home and cooked dinner like any other night. We sat around the table, talked about school, Lila's test, Sophie's scraped knee from soccer. No one mentioned their mom. No one needed to. Camille didn't move in right away. We kept boundaries clear, gave the kids time to adjust to this new rhythm. She still visited. Her daughters still came over for weekend sleepovers. Everything unfolded slowly, gently. I didn't feel like I was starting over. I just kept living finally, in a way that felt true to who I was. Monica still had visitation rights, but she rarely showed. The schedule was clear, but she often canceled at the last minute. One day, Sophie asked why Mom didn't come anymore. I simply told her that sometimes adults get busy, but that has nothing to do with how much she is loved. Then I held her close. I don't resent Monica. Not anymore. Maybe one day, when the girls are older, I'll tell them the full story, not to turn them against their mother, but to help them understand sometimes love needs limits. And sometimes, letting go isn't about anger. It's about knowing you've done enough.